Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Lane 4 webinar. Interesting times for everybody at the moment, I suppose, and hopefully this is half an hour of a chance for you to reflect, not think about the million things that you're having to do. If you're anything like me at the moment, the last few days have been constantly sitting on your laptops, on Skype calls, on Teams, connecting with people virtually. We're in a situation where all our non-essential travel is stopped. We're all working from home. So we've actually popped into the office today just to deliver this webinar. So I hope this is useful. It'll be about half an hour. The aim is to try and be interactive as well. We'll explain all that in a second. But to give you an idea of who you're listening to, so my name is Richard Parker. I'm one of the client directors at Lane 4, working with a number of clients across sectors. And before this, ran organisations within the sports sector, so worked in sport for a long time, was a CEO previously. And when I was asked to deliver this, it was really interesting reflecting about managing crises and strategy. So it took me back to the London bombings in 2005, where our office was just around the corner from when the bus went off, and what we had to do, setting up a different office, people working virtually for a while, but also leading strategy changes over time. And again, what you're doing is triggering a response within your teams. And so as a leader, what were the lessons learned maybe of what did we do in that unpredictable, unexpected time? So hopefully we're just going to pass on a few lessons and a few thoughts on that. And my co-host.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Katie Marnie, and I've just recently taken on the role at Lane 4 as our Director of Digital Transformation. My specialism is in business transformation. I've been with Lane 4 for about 10 years. And really the piece I deal with is people and change, and it's never felt more relevant, that digital transformation which is happening within Lane 4, which we are already, it was a part of our strategy to become more digitally enabled. And it literally has just been so accelerated as a result of recent events. And like Richard, I think I'm thinking about those times when life has been very uncertain. So I actually was working in the same building when 9/11 took off, when I was with Nortel Networks, and the response and how people deal with literally a global reset. So that's what we're going to spend some this afternoon talking to you about. And so obviously we're talking really about the coronavirus, particularly in the impact that it's having on our H&D and L&D clients and colleagues. And really what we want to look at is the digital delivery options that you have available to you to actually help keep your people connected and engaged and inspired when actually you may not all be together in a location. You may be in different countries anyway, but actually you may not be in the office and have any way of really connecting in a face-to-face way. And also as well, that recognizing that people at this moment in time, they may be self-isolating, which can be a very, very strange position to be as a human being. And then we're thinking as well about how we can support your business during this time. So what are the things at Lane 4? What's in our heart? What's in our DNA? And how can we actually help you, even if it's virtually rather than in the traditional face-to-face medium that you might have associated with Lane 4? So we can share some of that thinking with you. So just to kick us off, we're thinking about asking you this question. In the chat box, we've put in our Mentimeter code, and we encourage you to go on to Mentimeter and just share with us and just spend a couple of seconds thinking about the biggest challenge you're facing at the moment as a leader. So and it may just be in your own personal situation that actually you're finding yourself self-isolated. It may be the fact that global travel has ceased. So one of our clients came to us and sort of said, actually he's finding it really difficult because he has a global team of 100 people, and how on earth is he going to keep in touch with them when he spends 100 days of his year traveling, and that literally has ceased overnight. So very interesting times.
So great. I think if you click on the link there that's in the chat box, it will just ask you to put in some free text. And so the free text will come through to us. And the aim is that at the end of the session, we'll come back to some of those comments, think if there are any particular themes that have come through, and see if there are any specific questions that we might want to add or what might want to ask. So if you've got a question, if you've got a comment, if you've got a challenge, just please put some points through so I can see the first ones are coming through at the moment. And again, interestingly, as a tool, if you've not used this tool, we use it with quite a few clients. It is a great, simple digital tool that you can use to start getting feedback. And just to give you an interesting example, while we're waiting for some of the comments to come through, I actually used this to deliver a belief wall electronically to 600 Russians. And there's me and 600 Russians, a massive wall, and delivering a belief wall, which I'm sure many of you have seen it. So it's actually a really good tool to be able to use.
And we used it as a team to use just 3 words. So we got people to put 3 words about how they're feeling, and then fed back a word cloud straight away. And it was really powerful. So we enabled us to have a really great conversation about actually what was really going on for us, quite a focused way. So different ways we can use this, and thinking about actually connecting with people and sharing.
Brilliant. So keep sending those through, and as we go through the session, if we trigger any further thinking, again, please continue to send through those comments, send through some of those challenges, and we'll definitely come back to them during the session. This is going to be challenging our multitasking skills as we try to deliver.
I'm female, Richard.
We'll try and deliver and read and feedback all at the same time. Yeah. So this testing our adaptability. So I suppose just before we get into that, a bit of context, because again, I was trying to reflect on why would we do a webinar on digital delivery and what's going on. So this is obviously just open to our clients, right? So I think we've got 50, 60 of our clients listening to this. And obviously quite a few of you have been phoning us in the last week, postponing work and saying, actually, we can't do any face-to-face delivery. We've got a travel ban, non-essential travel, whatever it is. And so a lot of postponing work. Now, as you can imagine, it has quite a big impact on our business. As a consulting firm, it has a big impact on our revenue coming in our cash flows and so forth. And so that's quite challenging for us to have to think through. But then I tried to put myself into your shoes, into the client's shoes. And the reality is that it's having a massive impact on you, so this is impacting on your revenues, it's impacting on your staff, it's impacting on engagement. And, so even a client that I was speaking to this morning, actually as a retail FMCG client, their revenues are up, but their exchange rates are not in their favor. And therefore, whilst the revenues might be up, they're not doing particularly well because of exchange rates. And so I think we're trying to be very aware of the challenges that you are facing as clients. And so therefore, how would leadership development be useful for you at this particular time where, as I said at the start, you're probably spending most of your time just trying to connect with your teams that are based all over the place? And the first thing that made me think was this concept of momentum. So for a number of our clients, we'll be in a situation where we would have started a program, we could have done a launch event, we could be 1 or even 2 workshops in where generally they will be about shifting mindset of your leaders, changing leadership behaviors, helping them to lead better, lead differently, lead change, whatever the context might be. And so during those launch events or first workshops, you've just started to sow some seeds of different behaviors, or you've just started to see, oh yeah, that's interesting, I need to do that, or I'm going to use that tool with my team when I go back to the office and so on. And now you're in a situation where potentially for the next 2, 3, 4, even 6 months, you might not have any input. And it's so easy for people to just go back to their old behaviors in that situation that, well, I can't remember what it was, or everything has changed, or I need to focus on day-to-day stuff for those that you've done the kite exercise, they're right in the bottom right, spending all the time just defending revenues and looking after the team. And so how can we try and continue that momentum, maintain the shifts that we've started to create? And for me, the virtual delivery options are one of those. So this could be different forms of providing input. Generally, you would have had a face-to-face workshop, which would have given you some tools or some models that people would use in their daily lives. And so what we can use is virtual delivery to stimulate thinking, to remind you of a model that we've talked about. Have you inputted or used this in a particular way? We could provide new content, for example. There might be a different element of a particular model that we've talked about. And as I'm sure you know, there are different ways we can do that, from webinars, which we're doing now, which tends to be fairly one way. Yes, we can interact. We can use emojis. We can use Mentimeter as a sort of sidearm. We can use the chat box to ask questions. But if you've got 100 people on, that's quite hard to hear everybody. I mean, we've got 57. That's quite hard to hear all of your comments at the same time. You can use virtual classrooms, which are much more interactive. That's probably the closest we can get to a face-to-face delivery, where we can provide some input. We can see each other face-to-face. People can ask questions much better in smaller groups to enable us to be able to do that. You can actually have breakout rooms where you can go off and discuss in groups of 3, groups of 4, chat through a context. I actually did one with a client last week, where we asked them 2 or 3 questions, and they went in different rooms. And the different rooms, the joy of this, I had 2 people in America and 1 in Scandinavia in effectively the same room, but virtually. But we can also stimulate their thinking through podcasts, which might be a bit more downloadable, that people can use in their own time. They're on train journeys, have it on their phones. Again, just to stimulate that thinking, get them to create that mind shift that you started. We might use guest speakers, for example, to use a different idea or a different story that just continues the thinking that we've talked about. So that was my first thought, excuse me, about virtual delivery to maintain momentum. And then this is my working title of Virtual Nudges. But how else can we remind your leaders of some of the behaviors that they have talked about, thought that they were going to change? There is a tool that we use with a few of you called Mobile Coach. So really simple. We can send text reminders. Have you had the conversation around this? Don't forget that people are going through the SCARF response. Whatever it can be, we can send personalized nudges to your team.
Yes, and that's an interactive nudge, isn't it,
yeah.
Richard? So it's very much, it'll ask you a question and you can respond to it, and it can take you different places. So actually the nudge is as much of a two-way thing, because it's a chatbot.
Exactly, but we stimulate the interaction by sending something. And as you've seen on the slide here, the read rate on text messages is so much higher than the ability that they're going to dial into a podcast or something like that. So it's just a way that we can just keep that momentum. And for me, the digital delivery is a great way of us trying to be able to do that. Katie.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Rich has talked a lot about the virtual delivery and staying relevant and virtual nudges. And I think there is a whole area as well of virtual learning that I'm going to talk about. And so we're facing this new challenge, and I think that the reality is an unprecedented level of uncertainty and disruption, because we both referenced it, Rich and I referenced our own sort of individual examples, but in fact, the scientists at the moment are donning their hats to this new virus. You know, this is a very incredible virus in the sense that it has captured the whole world, and almost Greta Thunberg is getting her wish in terms of, you know, we're stopping global travel, we're not driving so much anymore. You know, all of a sudden the world is becoming a very, very different place to operate in. And I think that what does that mean for us, both as humans and as leaders and people who work in businesses? And I think that we're going to have to do things differently. And managing through this goes back to the heart of what Lane 4 does, and it is really about resilience and making a difference to people's working lives and helping them develop the skills that they need to bounce forward. So one of our key elements of our digital strategy is actually around, okay, we need to defend some things, but actually we also need to bounce forward. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about adaptability. So what is adaptability in our Lane 4 world? It's really two key pillars that we think about in someone being adaptable. And firstly, it comes back to resilience. And when we think about, so when I think about my team and I think about the challenges that they're facing right now, actually it's a sort of diverse team, there are three things that comes to mind. One is focus, and that is a key essence of resilience. The other is around alignment and actually how we operate as a team, and the other is about well-being. Now, well-being is a key part of adaptability. So adaptability for us is resilience, it's learning, and it's about keeping healthy. And we have a tool called Adapt4, which actually has a measure. It gives you an automatic report, a nice detailed report, which looks at your elements of adaptability and points you towards some bite-sized learning. So we have some learning, for example, around keeping a level head, which speaks to actually our resilience. You know, are we able to keep calm and maintain our state and maintain focus when we're facing great levels of uncertainty and stress? One of the other modules is around, and these are just sort of simple 6 to 8 minute sort of learning modules. One is around driving for success, which is really all about actually your learning mindset. Are you able to learn fast? So that's something about Adapt4, and that's an online tool that helps us think about increasing our adaptability. And we did this as a team recently. We can collate the reports, and actually I can begin to see where people are, because I've got people in my team at the moment who actually are. I've got one particular manager in my team who actually is in denial at the moment, which is really interesting, because actually the level of change that we're trying to do as a build team, because we're trying to accelerate our sort of products and do sort of some learning at the same time for internal people. Actually, this individual is spending time on doing the things that were already in the plan. Well, actually, the plan has changed. We need to move forward. We need to let go of what was in the old, and we need to embrace the new. And that is a real transition that people have to go to. So, as an organization as well, we're thinking about leading virtually, and so this speaks to some of the courses that we are developing. And thinking, for example, one of the areas we're looking about is leading teams and how to create trust in virtual teams. And this is so interesting, because there is that sort of leading, when you're leading people, and the out of sight of out of mind. You know, if we go back to the trust equation, and this comes back to some of the thoughts that we've had as an organization, you know, what is it that creates trust? You know, we think of credibility, reliability, and intimacy divided by self-interest. Well, intimacy is your relationship with somebody. Now, all of a sudden, if you're not seeing them in the office, or you're not regularly interacting with them, you've lost an element of trust just by that very nature of being isolated. So actually, how do you do that? How do you even notice that as a leader? And how do you help someone call it out and realize as well that that's what's going on? So as a group at the moment, we're sharing photos of what's going on in our day. Just quick check-in on a WhatsApp group. Also as well, when we have team meetings, we're donning, somebody dresses up in fancy dress, so that we actually have a bit of a laugh as well, because you know, we want to keep it lighthearted. We want to create actually some relationships. So we are massively accelerating our ability as Lane Forward to deliver you some fully virtual or blended courses, which are being delivered through Lane 4 Learning. So we've got leading through crisis, we've got leading remote teams, we have some of the self-serve online tools that we've talked about, which is Adapt4, Team4, Coach4. We've got one around inclusion and diversity, which is Include4. So we've got a whole suite of things that we really hope are going to help your businesses, if you need them, at this time, and so that we can support you as an organisation.
I think one of the great things about that is actually having it on your phone. Excuse me. So having it as an app on your phone that you can basically click onto, there's your own personalized learning journey there. If it's Adapt4, that you can click onto Adapt4, wherever I got to, okay, that's an area I want to be able to go through. So the ability to learn at your own pace is crucial, right?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, as you say, we're all using our phones a lot more now, and
Yeah.
I think in this reshift, you know, but you can get the same thing on your laptop. Yeah, so it's very much device agnostic and very interactive. You know, we've kept to the heart of how is it that we like to do things. We like to have individual context as an organization. We want to actually really stimulate and almost sometimes use shock tactics to change someone's thinking. We want a two-way conversation. So that's very much built into the way in which we're doing virtual courses. And yeah, so it's a really, I mean, and for me personally, it's a massive challenge to do this. So I've got this dual process going on, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
As a leader. Yeah.
I didn't know that you were doing the fancy dress thing, so I need to see some of the photos of that coming through. It'd be fascinating.
They're hilarious. It's good. It brings a different dimension, which you know you got to make the most of the situation we're in. You know, so yeah, we're getting to know people actually more, which is amazing because I thought.
And
like,
we need to see
well.
that behaviour come back into the office. We're back in the office. So just looking at some of the comments that came through on the Mentimeter, it's quite interesting because the feeling of isolation that virtual teams stuff and the balancing needs, you know, so a lot we're many of us are parents with children, and I'm sure it's a matter of time when schools close. So balancing being at home, being able to work, being a parent, and just that general well-being work. You talked there about one of the digital options around that. Do you want to give a bit more detail
I mean,
there?
again, it's really interesting. This comes back to core adaptability, because one of the components of adaptability is keeping fit and well. And actually, if you're, you know, we're all noticing that we are ending up spending literally 12 hours tied to our desk. Well, you need to create a little break for yourself to, you know, just walk around and actually take a call standing up. You know, there's plenty of things. There's a 7-minute workout app. You can do that for 7 minutes to break up your day. So I think that having those boundaries is key to resilience, and that's part of adaptability. So I think that thinking about how we're facing those challenges and opening up the conversation. So also, you know, really using Teams or discussion forums where people can actually share how they're feeling and other people supporting. So this notion of, hey, you know, I don't know how to do this, or I'm feeling this right now, and as a team then being able to respond to each other is just going, yeah, we're here, you know. So yeah, I think the interesting one as well is this. I mean, you and I were talking, Richard, earlier about all of a sudden lots of people are at home, and that's really new. You know, does that mean that I have to cook meals for everyone all day if I'm at home? Like, no, you know, we're going to have to find a different way around that. Like, because I'm not going to have time all of a sudden to do the washing up and the clearing up. So definitely thinking, establishing your boundaries, and really having open conversations as people, you know. So we definitely have to work in a different way, and that is adaptability. How do you keep your head? How do you keep calm when you've got 3 different children in different directions, you know, a webinar to organize and a team? All of a sudden it's right there. It's invaded your space. So taking that moment out. So we have a tool, an online tool called Connected Coach, and that actually talks about well-being. And part of that, the Connected Coach, is that we do a little mindfulness exercise, which runs to, you can pick a little mindfulness bit, and you can pick whether you have the ocean just lapping, or you have a mountain view, or you have a stream, and we just do a little mindfulness exercise. It takes 2 or 3 minutes just to go back to centering and actually think what you want to achieve. It's lovely. You know, it's just those little things actually can just help you be you rather than a stressed out person.
So it's brilliant, and I think there's definitely some points around that well-being and how the different digital tools, I suppose, it can provide you some awareness of the bits that you could be good at and the bits that you might need to be good at. It links into one of the other comments, or a number of comments, is around leaders' mindsets, and leaders, you know, in crisis are obviously being very reactive, and how do we help them with their decision making, but equally making decisions about, so all learning's off the table, you know, and that, you know, most of our clients here will be from the HR, L&D, and being said, no, we've got to pull that back and focus on crisis. And I suppose I give you time to think, but one of the things that I reflected on was what we need right now are leaders to make sound decisions. And it becomes very easy when in crisis mode that you react quickly. Well, you've got to react quickly to decisions, but also you've got to think. And for me, doing a half hour, 45 minutes or hour of some sort of learning just gives me that chance to reflect. Am I making the right decisions that are going to be able to lead the company, enable it to bounce back, as you talked about earlier, or bounce forwards, exactly. And so it's a short moment of time, but can have a massively positive impact on your ability to make the right decisions.
Yeah, and I think having those dual things, we are as leaders noticing our needs to be in the moment and reacting and making decisions in the moment, but making a decision that actually helps develop our people, or making a decision that actually helps spend time on things which will help in the future as well, and holding those things in. One of the things we talk about is leadership mindsets, the paradoxical mindset. And actually, this is entirely in that domain that we as leaders actually have to help people think about. Actually, now is the time to develop. Now is the time to really think about, how am I learning from what's going on? It's a brilliant reset button. So I mean, I've started a course with Cambridge University about digital disruption, about a new digital disruption model. The easiest thing to do would have been not to start that course, but I've decided I'd go with it. And it's a cooperation of sort of a lot of global leaders in the digital age, and all of a sudden realizing that I'm going to have to do assessments. Well, I'm just going to have to do it. Sometimes you have to just dive in and say, that is because I believe in the future of the business, and learning more is going to help. It is, that's, and sharing and collaborating with others and seeing who else is doing it. So actually, and it's hugely stimulating and energizing. So it's a good thing to be doing right now, and helping people see that it's a good thing actually is in itself, a liberator.
Yes. And I suppose that final point just to come to, so we talked about well-being and how we might support that. We've talked about adaptability, we being such a great skill, and I suppose links to your point there, you've definitely got that learning mindset. And how do we help identify whether people have got it and what they need to do to be able to grow it?
Yes, and that's within the adaptability tool. Actually, we measure that. Yes.
And then the final bit is that, I know you mentioned it earlier, but virtual teams is clearly a point that's being mentioned by a number of the people on the call. And those skills, I'm not sure we're going to have all our clients in dressing up, but the virtual teams ability of leaders could be used to creating social interaction by being in an office, by creating meetings, and the different skills and potentially time that is going to be required to connect with people in a different way.
Yeah, definitely, and doing things differently. Isn't there a remote teams, leading virtual teams webinar tomorrow?
Things have come to the end of our half an hour. It's brilliant time for you to be able to link to that. So, so I suppose firstly, if it's been useful, I hope it has. But tomorrow, we have two, one tomorrow and one on Friday, webinars, one on leading virtual teams and one in leading